The public health, safety, and welfare include the things like the traffic on the road. The Oil and Gas Act clearly doesn't cover that domain.
And that's correct.
And if that is, it is
That's why we
felt,
say we can deal with that issue.
but not solely by providing stipulations that are attached to the ordinance that you have the right to deny an application for its failure to meet community public health, safety, and welfare reasons. If it is a threat to the broader community for whatever reasons might be presented here, I believe you have both the jurisdiction and the responsibility to entertain those concepts from a community perspective. Of course, we have to show a reasonable, and that, we need to back that up, like the woman who could very clearly express the concerns with the road that aren't going to really go away with a sign. And a variety of things that I think perhaps people here, not having gotten into the tangle of where the Oil and Gas Act is appropriate and where zoning, the management of our communities, is appropriate, it is still appropriate that you consider, I believe, health, safety, and welfare of the broader community and how these wells impact it. And I encourage you to help the people sort out, even though you may have to endure some things that are not under your purview, in order to find those community impacts.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I just ran out and overused my time.
The only clarification that I need to provide to your reading of the ordinance and to the applicable case law is that, again, this is a special exception. And the question really is whether the impacts produced by this particular special exception are greater than the impacts that might be anticipated by any other example of the same use as a special exception. That's where the part that
I'm not catching that, of the same use of the special exception. I mean, you're looking at 10 special exceptions.
Is this gas drilling application going to create an injury to the public that is greater than another application for special exception for a gas drill? That's the test.
Well, I don't know, because when these regulations were put into place, you're talking about gas well drilling of many years ago. I mean, this was signed in 2004. How many trucks, how many trucks did you I wrote down how many trucks for the fracturing, and I could have sworn, I wasn't sure I heard it right, that you said 6,000 some odd trucks?
6,800.
6,800 trucks? 6,800 trucks? I don't know that when this ordinance was written, and I'm not suggesting that the ordinance itself is deficient for this purpose. I believe the ordinance is sufficient for you to entertain the concept that when you bring in gas well drilling, there are many ways to do it. They don't all require 6,800 trucks. And so you can use your special exception powers within the domain of this application, because it is different, because you can get gas different in many different ways, which is why these issues are so new, is because the ways they're doing it are so new. That's what the special exception empowers you to do, is to use your judgment to protect your community from this activity.
Not specific.
Not all of the activity.
Correct. Well, I think it can be addressed. Now, you have to remember, in terms of this being a legal use, that doesn't mean that we can stop them from drilling, but it means that we can certainly put conditions on them. And the conditions we would put on them are going to be based upon the testimony that was provided today, if the board decides to grant this, which would include conditions, and those conditions would include those concerns that were expressed here tonight.
Well, conditions could include things like, I mean, they're allowed to extract gas right? We know that. But they are not entitled to extract gas in the most efficient way that they feel is good for their business. And because the most efficient way they feel is good for their business involves inviting 6,800 trucks, doesn't mean you have to provide for the optimal use of the land.
Well, you're not providing me any testimony which says that there's other ways.
They have been extracting gas in Pennsylvania
You
since
have
the
to do it.
1800s.
The burden is on you.
I invite anybody else who has expertise on extracting gas. I mean, we all know, and you know, the gas is being extracted in many different ways. I would contend then a non-hydraulically fractured vertical gas well is within the purview of your stipulating in terms of allowing for, I mean, you could require that they extract it with a shovel if you want to.
No, I can't. I have no control over how they extract it.
You do have control
Ma'am.
by stating
Ma'am.
what you are
We
permitted.
have,
No.
again, I respect your opinion, and you've given these thoughts, you've given this a great deal of thought, and I respect that, and I appreciate the fact that you have come here and you've actually reviewed the ordinance. I thank you for that, and I'll take, and we'll take your comments under advisement, and I thank you for the comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I think we're...
What happens if the
No, you have to come up, sir. You have to come up.
What happens if the
You have to
decibel
say your
levels
name.
are too high?
Say your name.
Paul and Varsity.
What
happens if the decibel levels are too high?
That's an enforcement matter.
Again,
That
this
is-
board has no enforcement powers, and we've told you that when we started this hearing.
Who enforces that?
That's going to have to go back to DEP for enforcement with regards to their noise and their enforcement powers.
So if they say the decibel level is 55, it just gets approved, and if there's a problem with it down the road, DEP has to...
Somebody's going to have to address it with the
Okay.
DEP.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Are we... All right. Yeah, okay. Does the applicant have anything else? Tony?
Everything's been covered.
And I should like to address the board with regard to a safety issue and maybe some clarification from Encana. I refer to drawing number C, that's Charlie 602, and drawing C is in Charlie 301. I see that on drawing 602 that the permanent facility which is left behind when Encana goes away will include as part of its permanent equipment a pig launcher. Is that correct? Do I read that correctly on this,
Yes, that's
in
correct.
the permanent equipment list?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, if we refer to C6, C Charlie 301, the permanent pad left behind is to the south of the existing 24-inch transcontinental Transco pipeline. Is that correct?
What you're looking at to the south is the well pad that's reclaimed. The facility itself is to the north of Transco.
302 is to the north of Transco?
301? You're asking 302?
The facility on 302.
That's 602.
Excuse me, 602.
The facility,
The facility on 602.
on 602, this is the well pad.
Okay. Is that shown on 301?
301 is showing the well pad right here, which is south of the Transco
South
pipeline.
of the Transco 24-inch
Correct.
pipeline.
The well
Thank you.
pad is south of the pipeline.
That's what I said.
Correct.
What? And you know, I'm a novice at this. I guess we all are. You know, I mean, does Encana know when this pipeline was constructed?
The Transco pipeline
Transco.
was built in the 50s.
In the 50s.
Correct.